Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
This is Susan Scrimgeour, a friend that I've been blessed with for about 2.5 years. And I present her to you as the change maker that we are featuring today. And she's quite a change maker with a difference. I'll let you discover how different Susan is as we do this interview. Susan was an elementary school teacher. And in 2013, she retired, but for about 8 years, she continued to volunteer because she is a teacher and a lover of children at heart. I remember the first thing that I saw that told me that Susan was different was a photo she shared where she had dressed up. She had dressed up as Super Broccoli for her children. So this is a lady who goes all in behind her passions to inspire the people that she loves. And the people that she loves are definitely her family and friends, but they go way beyond just family and friends to anybody that she interacts with and anybody that she serves. So in 2020, Susan and her husband went to South Africa on a trip, and it was supposed to be for 2 weeks, if I recall. Except that,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was supposed to be for a few months. We had to cut it a little bit short, but we ended up, that was when things sort of in the world kind of changed.
It ended up being the adventure that they hadn't planned because the pandemic started. And I remember Susan saying, I'm not too sure how we're going to get home because routing the flights and figuring out if you would get access was added into the adventure that they were having while they were traveling to all these places and doing safaris and so on. And so some of Susan's journeys are actually behind her on those mixed style looking images. They're really, really beautiful. Susan inspires. Susan is a retiree who does not look like a retiree, nor does she behave like a retiree. And you are going to hear how full of energy, of purpose, of passion, of fulfillment her life is, and how she lights other people up to step more and more into their life of passion and fulfillment. Welcome, Susan. It is such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Now, there's so much more to say about you. Have I left out anything really important?
I think you hit all the high points.
The only high point I did not mention is that Susan is the only girl in a home with 3 boys. Well, her two sons are older now and they don't live at home, but they are very close to their mom and their dad. And so there's still this very tight relationship. Straight through the pandemic, Susan found ways to create opportunities to meet with her children, even if it was online, and to spread love and to spread hope to people. And she began doing that as well by starting up a business. And when I heard about Susan's business, I was so awed because here was a woman who, by all rights, should be a retiree who was slowing down and who was starting to relax and totter around and maybe play a little bit of board games with her friends and go to tea. And instead of that, Susan decided I will make the desserts for my tea because I'm starting up my own business to make better choices for myself, to set a better example for my family, to make better opportunities for healthy desserts available to our community, and to share with others recipes so that they too can choose to make good food like me, even if they are not in Canada with you. So where are you in Canada, Susan?
So I live in a place, we live in a place called Midland, Ontario, where we chose to retire to so we could be close to the water and in a small town. And it's a very friendly town where it still seems like a town where people know each other and feel connected. And we wanted to move to a place where there were lots of volunteer opportunities because we knew we would be retiring. And since we've moved here, we dove into a number of volunteer opportunities, my husband and myself. So we really feel that we know the town and we're an integral part of it. We are very involved in our Probus Club, which is a professional business group, and we run it. And even through this pandemic sort of crazy time in the world, we've been running that, and it's been very successful. So we are feeling that we're very engaged and involved in our town life, even though we just sort of parachuted into the town, not having known anyone, but it's really become home.
That's wonderful. And how did you decide? When did you decide, and how did you decide to start up this business? And tell us about the business as well, please.
Well, I've always loved to bake. I've always been a baker from a very young age. And I know, I think I actually like eating, but I love treats and I love baking. And it's always been a passion of mine. But as I have, in the last few years, and pretty much in the last 10 years, I would say, I've really become much more aware of healthy eating and healthy choices. And I've sort of increased that knowledge. And as I have increased that knowledge, I've become aware that there are some recipes and possibilities for treats that are healthier choices. And so that's when I began sort of switching over my conventional baking to baking healthier types of things. So for example, this little brownie here is an almond fudge brownie. And I remember when I got the recipe book, it was sort of a paleo cookbook, it was called. And when I made this, and I thought, oh my gosh, that tastes like a real brownie. That's amazing. And I would make it every time we went to friends' places, and friends tried and said, those are really good. And I thought, you know what? Why not have something that is sweetened naturally with maple syrup or something rather than conventional sugar? And it doesn't have white flour, it has coconut flour, so it just could be healthier for the body. And that sort of started this idea. The other thing that happened, so I sort of had started into healthy baking just for my own purposes. There was, when the pandemic happened, there was a group of farmers in town where we live who wanted to start a store that could provide opportunity for people to get healthy food, because people were finding it really challenging to get food. The grocery stores were having challenges, and it was just all over. So these farmers got together to make to bring their produce together to start a farm store online and could do delivery. And I was approached to ask and was asked, could I make some healthy desserts for them? Because I had brought a lot of these healthy desserts to our Probus Club where the mother of the owner was. Anyway, long story short, I ended up saying, sure, I'll try that. And then realized all the steps I needed to take to make that happen, to get insurance, to find a commercial kitchen and all those other steps. But here I am.
So the actual reason that I reached out to you was that I saw that you were celebrating your first year anniversary for your business. And I couldn't let that milestone pass by, because it's no small thing that you've done. It is a very heart-centered thing, because sure, you could have made the traditional desserts you've always made and not spend hours doing testing and doing recipe development and doing experiments to see which tastes better and who else likes it and what feedback. So it has to be a labor of love when you do this amount of work in the background before you even push a business forward. And that's the way you become a change maker. So you don't have to be what anybody considers a typical, business person in order to succeed at business. Really, what you need is a strong passion, a dedication, and the way to find where your business fits a certain group of people. So if you had to define, so before I go into that, let me just tell you how proud I am of you, how grateful I am that you are shining your light in the way that truly, truly fits you. And I want to wish you the best for the next year.
Thank you.
So if you had to define your niche, what would you say your business niche is?
So my business, I think I would define my niche as providing healthy treats for for people who value healthy eating. So and I know that I had to do a lot of thinking around who is my ideal customer. And I thought, well, who is that? And I thought, well, it would be somebody probably like me who likes to eat healthily, but maybe who wants to, provide some treats for their book club or provide some treats for their family, that just to have a little bit of a healthier sort of swing to them, where they don't have flour, they don't have gluten, they don't have dairy, or they're not sweetened with conventional sugar, sweetened naturally. And I thought, how will I let that get out there? And then I realized there are also people, particularly women, but not only, who really want to watch their weight. They want to make sure that they're not taking in too many calories, but they still might like a treat. So I thought, oh, you know what? That's actually interesting. Not only could it be a healthy choice of ingredients in there, but it could be a small enough item. For example, this little muffin kind of thing that's so small, a coffee cake banana bread, it's just 50 calories. So you could have the taste of it that still tastes good, but you're not really overdoing it. So I think that became my little niche of, for people who already are into the healthy mindset or would like to try it, here's some treats that you can have that are good for you and are not going to and are going to be more positive for your body rather than to be a negative impact on your body.
Have you found that a second group of people are being drawn into you over time? And that's the people who didn't necessarily come with the healthy mindset, but your good tasting treats have actually drawn them in, and they say, might as well, because actually, I'm losing nothing.
Interesting you say that. Actually, two things that happen in that way. One, I had thought about people who wanted gluten-free. I hadn't been thinking about people with celiac conditions as well. Some of my customers have husbands who have celiac, so that's a very specific thing. But on the other side, there have been some people who have seen my treats. There was one man who called himself a cookie monster, and he said, I just love cookies. I love cookies. I try them anywhere I find them. And he found my cookies at a local retail establishment, and he tried them, and he couldn't believe that he just liked the taste of them. And then he went and tried the other ones and the other ones. I will actually have to get him to write a testimonial for me, but he saw me in a park one day meeting with my Probus group, socially distanced and whatever. And he just said, oh, I got your cookies. I tried them. They were so good. And then he walked away, and then he came back to say, they're not just any cookies. They're, this is a maple pecan shortbread, and there's a classic chocolate chip, and there's a ginger molasses. And he started labeling the ones that he liked and why they were different than other ones he'd had. And he said, I never knew cookies that were healthy could taste so good. And I thought, wow, you're my perfect person who had not thought of it before. And he said, I'm not going to have the other cookies. Why would I have that stuff now that I know this is good? I said, works for me. You can become my taster, So, but I think that was an example of somebody who wouldn't have thought I want to eat healthy, but was just, I just like cookies. And now he's like, hey, why shouldn't I eat them without the flour, without the sugar, that kind of stuff?
Oh, so. Yeah. And now it's maybe a good time for me to introduce my own background. I'm the parent of a special needs daughter who is 9 years old, Emma. And I'm the parent of a 14-year-old boy, Brian. And that journey we've had with Emma was brain injured back in 2012 at age 8 months. And the journey began with a lot of darkness, fear, being told that she would never be able to move from a vegetative state, having lost all of her senses and ability to suck and swallow. And she had a tube. She couldn't even eat because she didn't know how to process anything in the mouth. So every 2 hours, I'd have to pull this syringe out, connect it to the tube, and feed her through that into her stomach. And that meant that my daughter didn't know how things tasted. It meant that if I continued putting food in through this tube, she'd never know how to use the mechanism of her mouth, of her throat, of her tongue. She wouldn't know how to chew. And we were actually told she will never learn. Until a mistake happened and a nurse actually pulled the tube out by mistake. And because I was the only one who used to do the cleaning of that tube and so on. But that's how things work sometimes. So she pulled the tube out. She didn't know how to put it back in. And my daughter was crying because hours and hours had passed and she had not gotten food, and she was supposed to get food every 2 hours. So she was screaming down the place, and I couldn't bear it anymore. So I took a couple of drops of my breast milk and I actually dripped them into her mouth from a little cup. And they said, no, don't do that, don't do that. But you know, it was like 6-8 hours she had not eaten, and nobody was doing anything to help. And I kept just giving her 1 drop, because to me, 1 drop wouldn't cause her to aspirate and something bad to happen. But after I tried that for several hours, I had tried, she swallowed a drop.
Awesome.
And that was the first time something lit up in me and said, ooh, if she can swallow 1 drop, she can swallow 2. And then we decided, you know, we think she can swallow. Therefore, we've decided she will learn to chew. And she learned to make the bolus of food, and she learned to swallow. We've decided that this tube is not going to be there forever. Forget about what anybody else says. And the doctor said, well, you might be seeing your child drinking now, but we're not going to advise you to take the tube out, because you need to be really, really sure before you leave her without a way to be fed. And that made sense. So we actually kept her on that tube, but we would only use the tube twice a day eventually. And that was to make sure that the tube flushed and wouldn't get clogged. Other than that, we took an hour at each meal to feed her very little amounts of food. And slowly she started to learn. Now the trick was realizing that when you sparked enjoyment through taste, she wanted to eat more. And so I'm listening to you talking about your desserts, and it connects right into me and my special needs journey, because Emma is a bedridden, brain-injured child, and therefore she's not very physically active. She loves desserts. I love to give desserts to her because I love to give my child joy. And in the situation she's in, there isn't so much that could be giving her joy since she can't get out or move. So I'm going to do that. Plus, if she likes crunchy desserts like cookies, I'm going to give her crunchy desserts like cookies to encourage her to build that ability to chew, to encourage her to want to swallow, and I'll keep giving it to her. Now, what I'm doing is also impacting on her health.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I'm doing something good in terms of training up those skills to eat, and those are really important skills. And yes, the desserts have a really important role in that, because I'm teaching her texture, I'm teaching her manipulation, I'm teaching her swallowing, etc. I'm also ticking a lot of the pleasure centers in her brain, and I want to do that. But I am hindering her health in some ways if I keep putting in the wrong kinds of carbohydrate, for example. And I do want to bring that back to you in a little bit for you to tell me why you've substituted certain things, because you did mention some substitutes. So I'm thinking these are the perfect ways to do it. I can still give her cookies, but your kind of cookies, because she's going to be getting almond flour or coconut flour, which I happen to have in my cupboard and which I do use. But other than changing out dairy for almond milk, which is what she's been drinking since she was 1 year old. Mm-hmm. And that has been critical because that keeps mucus down and therefore reduces chances of problems with her lungs, pneumonia, etc. And you also mentioned that you've substituted some of that, so we'll explore. But that sounds like such an amazing solution for those of us who have special needs children as well, because more and more I'm hearing about special needs parents who are making choices that go in the direction of keto. It may not be a full keto diet, in some cases it is, but it is about improving the quality of the carbs we bring into our children's diet, increasing the quality and the amount of protein increasing the quality of the fats we bring into our children's diet because we want to raise the omega-3s. All of those kinds of things are important things to tick. And when I listen to you, I'm like, I can do this in a very enjoyable way for my daughter. She can smile through dessert, but be getting lots of those boxes ticked. And I love that. So there's a third group that I would love to see starting to come to you, yes, which is those special needs groups.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that you've hit on something. I think sometimes parents need to be aware that for their children, they're modeling. And so I think sometimes the foods that we've been sometimes in the past used to eating and defaulting to because they're easy, whether it's pizza or quick, ready to go foods that we just heat up, or, people, buying things. I think it's interesting as people begin to realize they can actually create some of these foods themselves that are actually easy enough to do and that they taste good. And I think that was one benefit of during the sort of the recent pandemic that I guess still ongoing, people found themselves with the gift of time. And that was, I think, part of my reason for starting the business. I found, what am I going to do with my time? And, I was taking meditation and piano lessons and all kinds of other things, and a course from you and other things. But I then realized, okay, I want to really spend my time to create healthy choices, whether it's intentional movement or whether it's, baking these things. And I think a lot of people discovered that they could actually make healthy food in their own kitchens. That they, when all of a sudden we were all spending more time at home, I think people discovered, I have a kitchen where I can make some healthy things and they taste good. So I think just getting exposure to some of those healthy recipes, like you mentioned, those can really spark joy in us when we create something that looks good, it tastes good, we know that the ingredients are healthy, and our bodies respond. Our bodies really do respond. And we can, and I know you mentioned about the mucus with the dairy. I know that a lot of people, when they leave dairy behind, they sometimes discover, oh, I'm not snorting and sniffling anymore. They really can start to see those differences in their body by making the good choices, because your body will send you messages. Whether you're listening to them or not is another thing. But I think that's part of what I'm hoping to do with my treats, to say, hey, these can still taste good. You don't feel like you're missing out, but this is another option.
That's amazing. So you did talk about, you gave quite a list. I think it was about 4 or 5 things that you said, I don't use this, I use this instead. Could you tell me about those substitutions and why you made
Absolutely.
them?
So the most important thing for me is I did not want any gluten. I didn't want any wheat flour. I didn't want anything like that. So I knew that all my treats, when I went searching for recipes, because as you said, I did do a lot of testing of recipes, I would basically search for myself paleo recipes, because paleo often refers, generally in my understanding of it, refers to no dairy, no wheat, no added sugar, that's conventional sugar. Things are sweetened naturally. So I thought, yep, that seems to match with what I like. So my most important thing was no flour, no white flour, no wheat flour. Also, I didn't want any conventional sugar. I did not want granulated cane sugar of any kind if I could avoid it, at least as part of a recipe, ingredient. Along that line, I knew they needed to be sweetened somehow. So I made my mind up that I did not want to use stevia or other kinds of sweeteners. I really wanted to use things that are available in nature. So
you didn't want artificial sweeteners.
Correct.
Like stevia and all of that.
Right. Okay. And even though I know they're made from the stevia plant, but there's a lot of processing that goes into that. And that really just didn't work with what I wanted to do. I had a big debate with myself whether I wanted to go paleo, which also means grain-free, because I know I have some good recipes also with oats in them. But oats is like that's a grain. And I had to decide, do you want to or do you not? I said, nope, I'm going to just go paleo. So some of my best treats that have oatmeal, I don't do for my business. I might still do for friends. So the other things are that the natural sweeteners, bananas, dates, honey, and maple syrup, those 4 are what I use. And then if I do need to use a sugar of some type, coconut sugar, because at least it's somewhat better. I do list all my ingredients so that my customers would know, okay, there might be some coconut sugar in this, and my one thing that I'm trying to solve is that the chocolate chips that I use, so for example, on this little vegan chocolate cheesecake. The chocolate chips are made by a company called Ahoy Chips or something, whatever it is. They are an allergy-free chip. So they've got no gluten, no dairy, no this, no that, and they're not genetically modified. The problem is that unfortunately they've changed their recipe and it now has cane sugar in those little chocolate chips. So that's a disappointment for me because I really didn't want that. But it's better than having sugar in the recipe. There's very few of them and people know it in advance that the semi-sweet chips are there. If I could find chips that were made a different way or I made them myself, I've experimented with that a bit. I have to further investigate that. So I will. There's a natural chocolatier in my neighborhood who I think I could consult as a business person to say, hey, what could you help me with to get some chocolate chips that don't have this cane sugar? But because they were free of all the other allergens, that's why I went for them. So those are the main things that and I have no dairy at all. So I will use eggs in certain recipes, but there are several of my cookies are vegan. The cheesecakes that I make are vegan. They do use cashews that I know some people have some issues with cashews, but for me, I just had to make a judgment and I was okay with that. If I could find sort of sustainable source, that would be ideal. And I have experimented a little bit with making cheesecakes with other nuts. It just hasn't worked as well. So for me, I'm willing to make that choice. And for me, it's a balancing act. If I can put in more good things, then something that may not be as good for me, it sort of balances out. So it's well with my soul to do that. So basically and I do, as I say, I do use nuts. I do try to find organic when I can. So I buy a great big vat of almond butter that's organic. One interesting thing that, when you talked about starting a business and learning, I was not a business person. I was a teacher. Like I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I kind of faked it until I made it, I guess. The learning curve that I went on was huge and continues to grow. But I was at first buying all my ingredients, like this organic almond butter. I would buy it at the Whole Foods store because I knew it was good and it was pure. Well, I was paying huge retail prices for that. And then my costs were so much, I couldn't charge the amount that would be reasonable for a customer, but still cover my costs. And I thought, I don't want to just be giving it away necessarily. So I think one of the important things I've learned as we do new things is to ask for help when we need it and to seek help from people who know, from mentors. One lady whose commercial kitchen I use, Wendy, she saw me recycling these little jars of this almond butter. And she said, Susan, you could get this at a better price. I have a wholesaler who has organic almond butter. You're buying a great big bucket of it, but your price is going to come way down. And yes, you'll have to store it, but would you be interested in me helping you get that? I said, absolutely. So those kinds of things were a learning curve, and how I could buy eggs that were more in bulk and, these types of things. So it has been a bit of, as I say, quite a bit of a learning curve as I've developed it, but I feel that I'm sort of satisfied that my name and my Sunnyside Sue product is now becoming sort of a known commodity in my little town. And it's now just expanded to a town a little bit away from me. It was through word of mouth of somebody who works in my printer that her sister runs a store and said, she tried your stuff. She loves your stuff. She eats healthy. She needs some gluten-free stuff. Could you supply her? I said, great. So that's been a really, and it's actually been flown across to BC, which is the western part of Canada. And the stuff actually survived to make the journey out there, which I was quite surprised. So it's been a journey.
So maybe the next step is letting people order and you ship it to them as well, all over your country.
For sure. And
wow.
I think there are, as I say, that was something I never pictured because I thought the stuff I freeze it when it's made just so it stays fresh. There's certain things like the cheesecakes are perishable and the chocolates, but the cookies could probably survive. So recently I had a former student. I contacted a former student. It was his birthday, and I always contact him on his birthday. And he had contacted me we'd been in contact the year before when I just started the business. So now a year later, we were in touch. And I said, I'd love to send you some of these, Kyle. And he told me where his parents were. Anyway, I sent a box of all these cookies with a note to him, to his parents, to put in the freezer. And he was so excited to get them. And I wrote this note telling him how proud I am of him and how he was a special ed student and he made life work for him and set goals and achieved them. And it was just such a neat thing to be able to send him my my treats and my thing to send him that love that way. And it was a really nice little back and forth. And he said, oh, I'm going to gain 100 pounds eating this stuff. I said, actually, no, you won't, because they're very low calories, you know, etc. So it was quite cute. Yeah.
That sounds so wonderful, because all that I'm hearing from you, I'm hearing that you've gotten an education in supply chain management, in networking, and underlying it all is how important attitude is as we build a business. Your commercial kitchen manager would never have offered to help you unless you had been a decent person to her. Opportunities come because you have been so warm and so heart-centered to other people. And that's a big lesson. So business doesn't always have to be hard, and business doesn't always have to be, you know, the big dog eating first and the big dog looking out for himself. Because a lot of the time when you look out for everybody else, that community then also looks out for you, and you all grow together.
Absolutely. Yeah, so true.
That's also how, as people have been shifting into healthier ways of living, if they find the right community, when you fall down, you get back on track, or you get inspired. So I actually look at your personal page on Facebook, and the defining image for me is one of your feet in a kayak. I see that shot
My
time
famous
and
toes.
time again. Time and time again, it's a new kayak shot, but it's a version of the same kayak shot.
Yep.
And it is, here I am again, the retiree who kayaks every day almost. What a wonderful life this is, because it's a life that is intentional, a life that is active, a life that is so connected to others in your community and in your family. And a life that dares to learn new ways to do things. Mm-hmm. And speaking of learning new ways to do things, over your right shoulder, I'm seeing a contraption, and I know all about it, but I'd love you to tell us what that is doing there, please.
So I was so excited. This is my tower garden. So I think you guys can see that in the background there. And this is my newest little cucumber right here that I was so excited. I just saw that this morning. It grew in the 5 days I was away in the city. But this is an amazing garden that the best thing about this garden is, number one, there's very much local produce, but it waters itself because it has a pump. So it waters every 45 minutes. There are some nutrients that you get when you get the tower. So it gets the nutrients. These plants grow amazingly well. There's no weeding, so that's awesome. And then they just keep growing. And that's another thing I've learned, and there's been a big supportive tower garden group. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So when I want fresh basil or fresh cilantro or whatever, I just go over to the garden and pick it. And I was saying to Marcia earlier that my husband is not a big veggie eater, and I'm trying to influence him positively by having healthy foods and healthy choices. But veggies were not his best friend. But when they started growing on the tower, all of a sudden he said, oh, I think I'm going to just grab some lettuce from the tower for salad tonight. And I said, well, yes, it's local, it's here, it's free now. Well, not exactly free. I invested in it, but it was the best investment. It was such a great treat to be able to grow produce year round and to know that myself and my family could have healthy foods. And there was a part of me, and I'm still debating about it, if I can get production going well enough, Sunnyside Sue, which is what I call my business, might branch out into other healthy things. Because if people want to buy lettuce, or they want to buy kale or cucumbers or tomatoes from the tower, especially in the winter, that might be an opportunity for people who, you know, that because it's hydroponic and it's healthy. So I thought, well, Sunnyside Sue, I mean, on my, you'll see my little logo here, but on the bottom of the logo is the green leaf that my son put on, because he said, you know, Mom, I think we should put that green leaf on because that talks about healthy choices. And I said, absolutely. So that, you know, it was sort of just an idea I had. Here I am growing this stuff. And, you know, those of us who've ever grown veggie gardens, sometimes you end up with 100,000 pounds of zucchini. What are you going to do with all this? And, you know, I guess my answer would be make a zucchini muffin or whatever, or create some other kind of a product. But I think when we start making healthier choices and we see how much, like, to me, like Marcia actually saw me discover the cucumber just before we started. I was like, oh my gosh, this cucumber grew when I was away and I must have fertilized the flower right. The excitement that comes with making healthy choices, and our bodies reflect that because they glow. They show us, oh, you must have made good choices because you're feeling energy, your brain is clear. And I think all of us have had that experience. I don't know, but perhaps we've had that experience when we perhaps made some other kinds of food choices and our body might feel sluggish, or we might feel more foggy. And then when we make other food choices, we thought, oh, I sort of feel energized. So I think we really just need to listen to what our bodies are telling us. And this tower garden has just been such a fun hobby to do. So yeah.
What kind of plants do you have growing there?
So at the moment, I've got tomatoes, cucumbers, green peppers, basil, mint, cilantro, lettuce, kale, and I think that's about it for now. Oh, and I'm trying to grow lavender, but it's not working very well. So, but all those other edible things definitely are. And it was interesting, actually. There are green leaves, very big green leaves on the green pepper, and I make this green healthy drink. It's called an alkagizer. And so I took the leaves and I thought, oh, I could make this. I could use leaves off the tower. But it was interesting, when I went to drink it, my body just had this weird feeling that it wasn't a good thing. And so I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to Google it and just see it's safe. Well, didn't I Google it and find out green pepper leaves like that are big ones aren't really good for us. They should not be ingested. Smaller ones could be cooked, like you could boil them and they could be fine. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Like, I just thought, oh, it's a cheap source of green leaves, but my body, like, it didn't like it. Like, just the first sip, and I just had this weird feeling all down me. And I thought, okay, this is a message I'm receiving that this is not good. And I checked all that and I thought, no, I'm going to stick to my regular greens. But it was just one of those pieces of learning where you realize your body talks to you. You just have to learn to listen. So
right. So you've been practicing for 2.5 years, and
yes.
you're more in tune with what your body feels. And
oh, definitely.
Effect. Wow.
Yeah.
So far I've heard about shifting the choices we make so that we can give better quality nutrition to our bodies. And that when we choose to eat healthier, it does not mean that we have to give up pleasure. It does not mean that food has to taste cardboard. It can be very fulfilling. It can be just as enjoyable, and you still have space for treats. Exactly. And that if we could go farm to table and stay very, very close to the source of our food, then we get lots more nutrition coming to us. And that pays dividends in terms of our energy and our focus. And I would hazard it to say that your body gets younger, so even joint pain and responses like allergic responses and so on, you mentioned with the dairy, all of those things get dialed back. And so you said to me before we started this interview, I've been getting younger. And it's younger in mindset. It's yes. Less risk averse, willing to take that risk, willing to keep learning, not saying, you know, this is my time to dial down and fade into the sunset. No way. It's my time to really take this gift, which is I have nothing demanding my time and I get to put it into living my best life. So as we come toward the end of the interview, I'd like to know, because you epitomize living past what I think you might have imagined for yourself some years ago, living your best life and actually visioning new things that are exciting even now. So if you had to tell me your 3 tips for shifting into your best life so that you take as much joy and fulfillment from it as possible, what would your 3 tips be?
Well, I think just before I get to those, it's interesting when you talk about the Energize, because my slogan for my business, I decided, because I've been called the Energizer Bunny all my life. It's called Energize Your Body, One Blissful Bite at a Time. And I think it sort of encapsulates that whole thing. So my tips, my first tip would just be gratitude. a gratitude practice for me is so huge, because when I'm on the lookout for things, what am I grateful for? And even when I had a lot of piriformis sciatica pain earlier in the year, and it was really, I found it quite debilitating. My body was actually shouting at me to get better balance, because I was on my feet too much doing the baking. I was doing overstretching in yoga. There were all kinds of things. So until I listened to my body shouting and had to realize, okay, balance is important. So I think just that whole notion of gratitude for everything and anything in our lives, that's number one. Number two is a mindset to spark joy. So mindset is so huge, because how we think of things and how we label things, we send our bodies messages. Our bodies hear the words we use. They hear the thinking we're doing. And I think if you can look at something with a positive mindset, it's going to spark joy. And I'm going to give a quick example of that in a minute, and then I'll give my third one. My mindset example, I had to drive a truck recently down to Toronto, a big truck, because I was picking up a queen mattress from my sister in Box Spring. And it turned out the truck I needed to rent actually happened to be bigger than the one I thought I had to rent. And I was very fearful, thinking, oh, I can't drive a truck 150 kilometers. Oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? Like I've never driven a truck, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, as part of my Probus group, I run the Zoom and we get guest speakers. The guest speaker we happened to have that week was a guy who rowed across the Atlantic Ocean single-handedly in a boat he created. And he rowed across the Pacific, and he's about to row across the Indian Ocean. And I thought to myself, Susan, if this guy has rowed across the Atlantic, perhaps you could drive a truck 150 kilometers to Toronto. And I said, what about if you thought of it, instead of a fearful exercise, as an adventure? I could be a woman hearing myself roar. Let's do this. So when I changed my mindset, all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take a picture of me beside the truck. And I did, and I put it on Facebook, and people were wondering, what's with you in the truck? It was very funny, but my mindset shifted to the adventure and how I would accomplish it. And I guess the last thing after gratitude and mindset to spark joy is just manifesting. For me, what manifesting means is, and you talked about it a little bit, visioning your best life. How do I want to feel? What do I want to do? Like, I know when I was really trying to lose some weight or release some weight, I thought to myself, well, what is it going to feel like when I get there? I'll be able to put on my size 2 dress, but more important than that, I'm going to step on the scale or use my measuring tape, and I'm going to text my son Griffin, because he also has some struggles with, he has bipolar and is on medication that impacts his weight. So he and I are always the cheerleaders for each other with fitness. I said, I'm going to text Griffin and say, Griffy, I did it. I got to the goal. And I could picture myself doing that when it happened. And I knew I was going to feel so joyous and wear my clothes. So for me, the manifesting is all about, how will I feel when this thing happens? What will it look like, taste like, feel like, see? How will I hear it? So to me, that's the huge thing.
That totally resonates with me, because, so I did show the book. This is Lighting the Path. And although the book was sparked by Emma's special needs journey, 3/4 of this book is full of guidance, tips, stories that talk about vision your best life. See all the elements of the life that you want for yourself, for your family, for the impact that you are going to have and that you are called to have. And then the way that you begin moving into that is that you must experience it. You must feel it, and it must feel real to you, because it's only when it feels real to us, Susan, and I see that as you say it, only when it feels real to us does our motivation spark up, and we're not going to forget it.
No, exactly. And I think our minds, as we all know, when we dream, when we're in the middle of a dream, when we're dreaming at night, sleeping, that dream seems very real. Our brain at that point doesn't know the difference between reality and not. So it's the same thing when you're manifesting your best life. If you're sort of experiencing it and feeling it, this is what I would see, feel, taste, smell, blah, blah, blah. This is how I would feel. Your body then finds ways to make that happen. Because you've set the wheels in motion, you've put it out to the universe that this is what I'm going after. It's sort of like putting in your order with the cosmic waitress. You put in your order with the cosmic server, and you're putting it out there, and then you're taking these little steps. you're taking actionable steps. So you don't just sit there and do nothing. You take steps towards your goal. But I think if you have a very clear vision, then you're going to know it when you see it, or you're going to be able to approximate it for sure.
I remember once upon a time when I heard people talk about intention and cosmic things and manifesting, I'd say, what woo-woo stuff.
Yes. Because
my language wasn't geared toward accepting that those words actually could mean something solid. But really what it means is just really connect and believe, see it, believe it, know it. Because unless you know it, you don't get the wheels turning to make it a reality in your life. So it's not just believing it's going to magically come to you and it's going to come. Manifestation happens through your follow-on effort as well, right?
Yes.
And Susan is a wonderful example of exactly how that happened. The dream came. Maybe she didn't quite believe it in the beginning, but slowly that dream took hold. And now Susan is being led by the dream because that dream is growing into bigger and bigger dreams. Yes. That leaf that was planted there by her son in her logo had bigger intention than just being, I'm a healthy brand. It's maybe one day I'm going to be selling leaves as well. I'm going to be, the farm to table lady. So Susan, thanks for the big changes that you are making yourself through your efforts. And I want to express my gratitude because you have extended as a special gift to anybody who's watching. Although you don't have your own website, you've said to me that you will give me a couple of recipes that I will make available through my own website. So you can go to my website, which is Marcia, MARCIANB.com. And I will have on there the way that you can get those recipes, whether it is that you sign up through a little sign up form and I'll send you an email giving you those recipes, or I sign you up to the newsletter where I feature Susan's recipes and Susan's business. So thank you for giving us this time and for sharing your Sunnyside Sue energy and joy. It's really a bright spark to me to talk to you anytime I get to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, and just like to wish all the people watching well. And I think we're just lucky to have somebody like Marcia being a change maker herself and just putting this out into the world to sort of help all of us move forward. So thank you, Marcia, too.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day. I know your busy life continues and you have more adventures ahead.
All right, take care. Bye,
everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.